It's been said the most difficult part about being a gunfighter in the Old West was not becoming one. It was retiring. Following 26 years of coaching in the NFL, the Vikings' old gun, Jerry Burns, retired at the conclusion of the 1991 season. A season that saw its share of rough rides, quick draws, and dead-on bullseyes. Though this gang from Minnesota duked it out week in and week out, at season's end, a postseason playoff berth and home appearance in the Super Bowl remained out of reach, leaving the Vikings in the dust, awaiting the arrival of the new sheriff in town. In week 1 of the 1991 season, the Minnesota Vikings had hoped to establish themselves as a team to be reckoned with as they firmly set foot and squarely knocked heads on Chicago's Soldier Field. When the Vikings weren't harassing Bears quarterback Jim Harbaugh, they were intimidating Chicago's receivers and running backs. While defense was the order of the day, it would be up to the Vikings offense to claw away at the Bears' 1-point lead early in the fourth quarter.
Trying to get caught by Anthony Carter, at the 35-30, 25-20, shoved out of bounds at the 15-yard line. Anthony Carter with another big catch.
Despite throwing for nearly 250 yards, quarterback Wade Wilson was unable to sustain a lasting drive to the end zone. And Minnesota's high expectations of an opening day comeback came thundering down, leaving victory in the hands of the Bears. The cold reality of the Vikings' opening day loss did little to warm the hearts of the men from Minnesota. However, behind the scowl of defeat was born an inner strength, the will to succeed. And in week 2, one by one, the Minnesota Vikings entered Atlanta's Fulton County Stadium, determined to persevere, to saddle up a victory for their return trip home. On this Sunday showdown in Atlanta, the Vikings' Herschel Walker provided decisive muscle, galloping for 125 yards as the Falcons found it difficult to trip up Minnesota's offensive stampede to the end zone.
Goes to Carter, Anthony Carter to the 5, to the 3, touchdown! Vikings, Anthony Carter!
While Atlanta's defense was unable to prevent Anthony Carter from scoring the first rushing touchdown of his career, the Falcons' Red Gun offense was still able to pull the trigger. With Minnesota trailing by 3 at the half, the pressure was beginning to build. For the Vikings had not claimed a victory outdoors in their last 11 tries, and Minnesota's defense was determined not to make it number 12. Viking defenders John Randall, Ken Clark, Henry Thomas, Chris Dolman, Ray Berry, Mike Merriweather, Carl Lee, Reggie Rutland, Joey Browner, Al Noga, and Felix Wright converged on ball carriers like tumbleweeds in a sandstorm. The Vikings secured their quest for glory early in the fourth quarter, thanks to the swift feet and quick hands of wide receiver Chris Carter.
And Wilson with a snap, drops back, 5-step drop, cocks his arm, throws it deep downfield. It is to Carter, one-hand catch. Did he make it? Did he make it? Yes! What a catch! Touchdown!
Minnesota's win over the Falcons sent the Vikings home with their first victory of the season. Some may have been impressed by the numbers the San Francisco 49ers have put on paper in years past. However, in week 3, it was the Vikings' number 81, Anthony Carter, whose performance made for headlines.
Fires in the middle, caught, Carter at the 40, Anthony to the 35.
Carter's 46-yard scoring reception put the wide receiver's shock-absorbing talents on display for all to see. However, as expected, the 49ers responded all afternoon with wide receiver Jerry Rice making himself feel right at home in the Metrodome.
Carter in motion to the left. Young to throw. Goes for the end zone. Rice is there. Touchdown 49ers.
Minnesota's defense did its part to spoil any hope of a 49ers road win by proving to be rather hard-headed hosts. Herschel Walker's one-yard plunge put the Vikings up for good, sending the boys from the Bay packing. There was little room in the headlines for the Vikings, who were 2 games under 500 going into Week 7. However, Minnesota's defense rallied against the Phoenix Cardinals, providing a lot of hits, a few runs, and no errors. The Vikings dominated the Cardinals, thanks in large part to the outstanding performance of quarterback Rich Gannon.
So here we are with Darren Nelson in the backfield. And a man in motion, Jordan, the tight end. 4 wide out, Chenal back to throw. Gannon pump fake once. Now pressure in the middle, spins around, gets away from it, got room to run to the 15, tries to get wide at the 10, cuts it back to the 5. Touchdown! Rich Gannon, super run, weaving in and out, and scores the touchdown. Pressure in the middle, scrambles away from it, off to his left, cocks his arm, throws the ball downfield to Chris Carter, leaping catch! What a catch! At the 25!
Gannon threw for over 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a home run ball to Chris Carter.
Fake give Gannon to Walker, back to throw is Rich Gannon, fires downfield, Chris Carter catch! 10, 5, touchdown! Vikings, Chris Carter!
The Vikings' trouncing of the Cardinals wasn't the only reason for celebration in Minnesota. In Week 10, fans were also celebrating the success of their world champion twins. And while Minnesota's boys of summer had put the bats and balls down for the winter, Viking defenders were continuing to stay low, using their bodies to stop the ball. Despite Minnesota's hard hits, the Vikings were unable to score in the first half. However, in the second half, the Vikings came to life, thanks in large part to the nifty glove work of linebacker Mike Merriweather.
In the middle, intended for Cobb, and around, picked off Merriweather, at the 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown!
Minnesota's offensive line drive sent running back Terry Allen through the midfield gap, helping the Vikings hit 500 on the season.
I got a big hole, 40, 35, 30, foot race, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Terry Allen, as he scampers 45 yards for the first down.
The Vikings finished the 1991 season with an 8-8 record. A playoff berth was not in the cards for the Vikings, as they lost 3 of their last 6 games, all to interdivision foes. And at season's end, the Vikings not only bid farewell to the 1991 season, but also said goodbye to an old friend. Minnesota's old gunfighter, Jerry Burns, retired at the conclusion of the 91 season, ending an era in Minnesota Vikings football. Burnsy takes with him the codes of some of the best. Vince Lombardi, Bud Grant, George Allen. All contributed to the success Jerry Burns enjoyed as the Vikings offensive coordinator for 18 years and head coach for the last 6. Burns' Vikings made the playoffs 3 times. His departure marks the end of an era and the dawn of the new frontier.
Everybody! I tell you what, these guys are excited. They're excited. They're excited. We had our best week of practice. Now, I'll tell you something. I'm going to tell you this right now. We're on the move at Northwestern. We are on the move at Northwestern. We've had our ups and our downs, but there's only one way you get to the top of the mountain. You've got to be in the bottom of the valley. We've been there. We're not going back anymore. We're not going back anymore.
The 1992 Minnesota Vikings promise an exciting brand of football under the leadership of new head coach Dennis Green, the new sheriff in town. Green is a former assistant coach under Bill Walsh while at the San Francisco 49ers, and was head coach at Northwestern University and Stanford University. Green is the 5th head coach in the Vikings' 31-year history and brings with him the reputation of being an intense motivator with the innate ability to stir up excitement.
He pulled his jersey off. This should be clean. This should be a walkthrough.
While head coach at Northwestern, Green was named Big Ten Coach of the Year and ended the Wildcats' record-setting losing streak. Green has helped shape players like wide receiver Jerry Rice, quarterback John Elway, and Vikings running back Darren Nelson. Throughout his years of coaching, Dennis Green has always been a fiery competitor with a strong rapport with his players.
He's been answering us for the last couple of years. He's been kept behind us and giving us the strength to keep going out each game and go out and finally get one. Is that good, Coach Green?
Thanks a lot. I tell you what, you guys deserve it. You work so damn hard. We've been through some rough times, but damn it, I keep seeing us come out on Monday.
When Green joined the Minnesota Vikings, he not only realized a long-time goal, but adopted a football organization with a rich tradition of excellence from the front office to the playing field.
Number one, I think it's a team that has a lot of talent, and a veteran talent, and a team, I think, that really just has to kind of come together as an entire unit. The second factor is that I've been familiar with some of the people in personnel. I've admired their personnel in the 80s since we played them back in 1987 when I was with the 49ers, and that's Jerry Reichow and Frank Gilliam, and they've done a great job of assembling talent. The other thing, I think, is just the ability to get in and work real closely with everyone and to be heavily involved in every aspect of the football organization and the Minnesota Viking organization.
In 1992, the Vikings holster an impressive roster, including second-year speedster number 21, Terry Allen, who recorded his first 100-yard rushing game last season and will be relied upon heavily to carry the ball in '92. Viking ball carriers led the NFC in rushing in '91 and will be expected to provide that same giddy-up in Coach Green's offensive scheme. In 1992, the Vikings will have a new offensive weapon, thanks to an aggressive Plan B signing.
There's the draw up the middle to Craig, and he breaks loose and runs loose. He gets use of the 30 to the 25. He's down to the 20, breaks loose again. He's to the 10, 5, touchdown 49ers. Oh, what a spectacular run by Roger Craig.
All-Pro running back Roger Craig will be looked upon to provide additional firepower to help put down opponents at 92. His veteran leadership and 9 straight years of playoff experience will be a welcome addition to Coach Green's stable. In 1991, the Minnesota Vikings played an aggressive, hard-nosed style defense that is common with the NFC's black and blue division. In '92, Vikings defenders looked to continue that same seek and destroy tradition.
We learned a thing that said there's no disgrace in getting knocked down. The disgrace is when you don't get back up. Perseverance is really important. You're always, in my opinion, going to be challenged. You'll be challenged in a particular game when things are not going well. You'll be challenged in a particular season. And perseverance is your willingness to get knocked down and to get back up and to get knocked down and get back up again, because your will to succeed will overcome your fear of failure.
In 1991, number 93, John Randall, led the Vikings in sacks with 9.5, followed closely by number 56, Chris Dolman, and the hellacious hitting Henry Thomas. Linebackers Jack Del Rio, Ray Berry, and Mike Merriweather will be depended upon to close the door on opposing teams' running backs. The Vikings secondary tallied 17 interceptions in '91 and hopes to improve upon that total in '92.
Shotgun, 3rd down, 4 Rams at the 9 of the Vikings. Back to pass, Everett hurls it. It's picked off! The far side by Rutland up the sideline.
That's a touchdown.
25-30, 35-40, 45-50, 45-40, 35-30, 25-20, 15-10-5. Touchdown!
The NFC's leading punter, Harry Newsom, will be relied upon to continue to put his touch on the ball in '92, providing ample time for the Vikings special teams to greet the opposition's return men. In addition, Quad Revez's reliable foot will give the Vikings an additional lift in '92.
We have to be bold. We have to not be afraid to take chances. From there, we move into a system where some people would say, looking at the Minnesota Vikings, it looks to me like it's the 49er offense, or it looks to me like it's the Washington Redskins offense. But in reality, we want the Minnesota Vikings offense of the 90s to be a merge of the two, that you would look at them and say, that offense is unique to the Minnesota Vikings.
A unique feature of the Minnesota Vikings is its offensive line. Gary Zimmerman, Tim Irwin, Kirk Loudermilk, Todd Callis, and All-Pro guard Randall McDaniel should continue to intimidate opponents and frustrate pass rushers in '92. Minnesota's powerful offensive front should give Viking sharpshooters the time needed to fire away at receivers.
What we're really excited about our receivers because I think that we have probably as fine a receiving core as there is in the National Football League. And therefore, I think that will be really the key for us, to be able to get the ball to receivers down the field as well as in a controlled situation.
Anthony Carter dazzled fans in '91 and is expected to continue his same aerial acrobatics and juxtaposing jukes in '92. Tight end Steve Jordan stands atop the Viking record books with most pass receptions ever with 411, a number that is sure to increase in '92. In 1991, Chris Carter emerged as a big play receiver for the Vikings. His ability to fearlessly leave his feet in pursuit of the pigskin will be a welcome sight in 1992. The Minnesota Vikings bid farewell to their old gun. And as he makes his way down the winding trail to retirement, it marks the end of an era and the beginning of the new frontier. The Vikings stampede to an exciting journey, spurred on by the new sheriff in town.
Hi, I'm Steve Sable. The Minnesota Vikings have made the playoffs 15 times, won 16 championships, and played in 4 Super Bowls since joining the NFL in 1961. And with the arrival of Coach Dennis Green, the new sheriff in town, the Vikings hope to return to that same championship form. Now, a few years ago, Minnesota ranked #1 in defense in the NFL in 1988 and 1989. And if you'll remember, it was with defense that the success of the Vikings really began. Return with me now to the late 1960s and the era of the famed Purple People Eaters.
In Duluth, Minnesota, chilling blasts off Lake Superior often keep even the hardiest at home. But on a March weekend in 1988, all were gathered at nearby Miller Hill Mall for a long-awaited reunion of the famed Purple People Eaters, the Vikings' legendary front four.
First of all, this is John, Paul, Ringo, George, and who's that guy on the end over there? Oh, he's a ringleader.
How about adjusting to life after football? Was that tough for you guys?
It wasn't so bad for Jim because he played so long he started drawing his Social Security.
One of the things that I feel most proud of is that I had an opportunity to play with people that I know changed the game. I mean, we would simply stun the players. We'd put up, a lot of them didn't want to play against us. They virtually walk off the field because they couldn't stand up under the pressure.
And I look back over an entire career and see a lot of fun, see a lot of good times with great friends, and I guess when I think back on it, that's what I think about.
This is our thing, man. This is our thing. Get it in here, Gary. Look here, I ain't lying, baby. Let's win this today. Let's win this one now. Let's go.
From the mid-60s to mid-70s, the Viking defense was magnificent indeed. And its spearhead was a ferocious front four: Jim Marshall, Gary Larson, Carl Eller, and Alan Page. No one allowed fewer points over a 14-game season. And at one point in the 1969 Pro Bowl, the defensive line was the four members of the Purple Gang. They were the guardians of a far north frozen outpost. Hard men on a hard field. Defenders who played a bold brand of football. A game with a different look, a different feel, and a different sound.
1,000 pounds of rough, tough, and mean. 1/2 ton of hit and smack and sock and tear. 4 relentless men, all for one and one for all. As simply stated by Viking Captain Jim Marshall, the best plan is for the 4 of us to meet at the quarterback.
We had a feeling that when things were going well, that there was absolutely nothing that we couldn't do. There were times when we'd sit back, if the offense wasn't scoring, says, okay, you know, we've got to go, we've got to score. We got to take the ball away from them, take it down the field and score. We'd go out sometimes and watch our offensive team practice, and we'd laugh. So we knew that there were things that we had to do.
I think Jim Marshall was the undisputed leader.
Watch out, come on now. Hey, come on, baby, come on, let's have a nice clean one, okay? Come on, we don't want to have a fighting and stuff, man.
He had some rough times, he had injuries, he had illnesses, many, many things. But whenever the gun sounded, Jim was ready to go, and you knew that.
It don't break my neck.
Jim, I think you're ready.
I'm not dead.
For 19 seasons, Captain Jim led the charge. Number 70 was ultra-light and ultra-quick. He would survive countless skydives, a gunshot wound, and nearly freezing to death to play in a record 282 straight games. His toughest task was surviving practice collisions with teammate Carl Eller. Eller was huge. They called him Moose. He took his hot temper out on whatever was nearest, a blocking sled, a locker room, or all-pro Forrest Gregg.
I think that my greatest moment, without any hesitation for me, was the safety that I got on Roman Gabriel that led us to our first Super Bowl. It was particularly rewarding for me because I was playing across a guy named Bob Brown. He was a stalwart in the National Football League and had been a ferocious competitor. And so that was a highlight of my career.
Gary Larson, number 77, was a former Marine who always remained on guard duty.
When you have the whole defensive line going after a passer, the offense counters that by trying to run people up the middle on draws and screens to slow them down. We'd always have somebody watching for that type of a play, and it fell onto my shoulders more often than not.
Number 88, Alan Page, was the most spectacular of the group and its only Hall of Famer.
The only way that they could stop him was to hold him. I mean, he could line up, he had the freedom to line up virtually any place he wanted to up and down the line. And with his quickness, he was into a gap, and they stopped calling holding on the offensive lineman simply because he was disrupting the game. I mean, it was just play after play. They couldn't get the ball off. I mean, there were times we'd sit back and say, hey, they're not going to do anything. We're not going to let them even get a yard.
Page was the final ingredient of a defensive line that did more than hold its ground. They attacked, and they scored. For each sack, a man earned a bottle of Dom Perignon, bought to celebrate their conquests. Metropolitan Stadium was to be defended under any circumstance, and oh, how they loved their winter warriors, back then and today. When Doug Sutherland and the original Purple Gang arrived in Duluth to sign autographs, they were given a hero's welcome by fans young and old alike.
All right, for those of you who've just joined us, what's going on at center stage right now is the infamous Purple People Eaters are signing autographs.
Hello. How are you today? Fine.
For the generation who braved those frigid Sundays, it was a great family reunion. And for those who weren't around in years past, it was an opportunity to see face to face the men spoken of reverently over dinner and at firesides by their parents.
It was a very romantic time. We knew that when the sun dropped over the back end of Metropolitan Stadium that the temperature was going to drop 20 degrees. We waited for the reaction of our opponents. There was a feeling of togetherness, esprit de corps, a camaraderie that unsurpassed.
4 relentless men, all for one and one for all. As simply stated by Viking Captain Jim Marshall, the best plan is for the 4 of us to meet at the quarterback.
While the play of the Vikings defense will be a major factor in 1992, Coach Green's attention will also be focused on the other side of the ball, on his quarterbacks. Now, in 1969, the Vikings made their first trip to the Super Bowl, thanks in large part to the outstanding play of their quarterback, Joe Kapp. During that '69 campaign, Kapp awed fans, throwing for 7 touchdowns in one of the most overwhelming victories in Minnesota Vikings history.
In 1969, the Minnesota Vikings, led by fiery Joe Kapp, faced the Baltimore Colts in the season's second week. It was a revenge game for the Purple, who were still smarting from a 1968 playoff loss that proved to be the stepping stone for an NFL championship for Baltimore. The game began as anything but a masterpiece for the Vikings. But head coach Bud Grant knew he had a masterful leader in quarterback Joe Kapp.
Well, some people are born leaders. I think Joe Kapp just happened to have that intangible follow me type of personality. He's a big man. He stands tall. He's got a gravelly, deep voice. He's an example type leader. I mean, follow me, not go and do what I say, but follow me.
The Vikings followed Kapp into the end zone 7 times as he led them to one of the greatest victories in Minnesota history. In an era of high-gloss quarterbacks, Kapp had a style so unpolished it looked ugly. But in quarterbacking, just like in anything else, looks can be deceiving.
Joe had a very good arm. I mean, very strong, very quick release. He could throw the ball a long, long way. He could stand there and throw the ball 50, 60 yards with no effort, flat-footed, just flick of the wrist. And I don't remember that I was concerned about the wobble because it got there.
Kapp kept throwing up his paper airplanes, most of which touched down in the end zone. Number 11 threw for 449 yards, and his 7 touchdown passes tied an NFL record. The Vikings' smashing 52-14 triumph ignited a 12-game winning streak, an NFL championship, and a berth in Super Bowl IV. For Joe Kapp, the game stands as the masterpiece in his pro football career.